All right. Well, everyone, I appreciate you taking another listen to the Run Breiter Podcast. Friends, I'm excited to say this is episode number 61, and today we've got on an awesome guest who I actually recently found through the lovely world of social media and the running community within it. We got Emily Runs a Marathon on, which, first of all, Emily, I love that name because I love the marathon myself. I have a goal of running a marathon in every state. So for someone who is a marathon runner just like me, as well as the fact that we are both ambassadors for a really cool program that's allowing us to run some really cool races called Ventures Endurance, that connected us today, and I'm really excited to have you on. But let me pause here. Do you mind giving a quick background about who Emily is? And I'm sure I'll have plenty of questions to ask you.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me here today. I'm super excited to get to know you and more about your podcast through Ventures Endurance and run some really cool races this year. I'm Emily, or Emily Runs a Marathon on TikTok. My name actually was inspired by a movie I watched when I was training for my first marathon called Brittany Runs a Marathon. So it's a great inspirational movie to watch if you're just getting to running and need to, feel inspired by someone else who didn't think they could do it. I am a 31-year-old that lives in Charleston, South Carolina. I work a full-time corporate job, but in the pandemic, I found running to be my hobby, just as a release to kind of de-stress amongst a world of craziness. And since then, I went from basically not being able to run a mile without stopping to, as of this weekend, running my third marathon and a ton of half marathons, and really finding a lot about who I am as a person through running and gaining a ton of confidence.
How cool. Thank you for sharing that background. Really helpful. So you said that during the pandemic, running became a hobby for you. It's crazy to think that was already a few years ago at this point where we were in the thick of that. But was that really your first experience running at all, or had you been running at a younger age and you got more serious about it during the pandemic?
Yeah, it's been kind of like a winding road when it comes to my relationship with running. I grew up playing soccer really competitively, so obviously you run a lot playing soccer. But throughout my entire adolescence, I always thought of running as a punishment because that's what you were forced to do if you didn't, make the goal or if your team didn't perform well. So while I knew running went hand in hand with my sport and I needed to be a good runner to be a good soccer player, I didn't really have a positive relationship. It wasn't something I ever wanted to do in my spare time because it was just in my head as a punishment until I got a lot older, and now it's like my mental health release.
Yeah, no, that's great. I appreciate the background on that too. And I mean, we see this so often, whether it's soccer, which I feel like is probably the most popular sport that leads to people running endurance that I've at least gotten to know on a personal level and have brought into the podcast. But there's so many other sports too, and what you talk about regarding it being a punishment running in that sport, and then not really having that healthy relationship with it, and then the years pass, and now you're looking to stay competitive with sports, and running is, as we both know, it's an easy sport to enter into. You just need a pair of shoes, right? But I'm curious, as far as the stigma of running being a punishment in sports like soccer, this might be a really hard question, but going through that experience for youth athletes who are coming up and maybe they're in soccer, but maybe running is a better sport for them. Maybe it's a better long-term sport. What would you say as far as advice to have a good mindset with running rather than view it as a punishment at a young age? Is there any thoughts you have on that?
Yeah, I have a ton of thoughts about it because actually in my early 20s, I was a soccer coach, and I really tried to instill a positive outlook about anything we did in practice or in games with the girls that I coached. I didn't want them to have a negative mindset, and I think it's all about the culture you create. So if you are a younger athlete and you feel like running is a punishment and that is, kind of the stigma that's set amongst your team, I think one thing you can do is just speak up, talk to your coach. Running is a really healthy outlet that you can carry with you as a sport for the rest of your life. I'm in my 30s. I love kicking a soccer ball, but I'm not going to go play on a competitive soccer team again. But I feel like I can run for the rest of my life, and that's something I really want to keep a healthy balance with. So if you are on a team and that running is only being used for punishment and it's not being told to you that it could be a positive relationship or a way to improve your endurance to improve performance as an athlete in your sport, then I think just by like level setting with your coach is a huge thing. Like coaches want to hear from you. They want to create the ultimate environment to help you succeed. And I saw that when I was coaching. My girls would form little running groups and run in the off season together, where a lot of them got into cross country together in the off season. And it was because they were able to see directly how endurance running and building up that base of stamina really helped them in those 90-minute long games, especially in tournaments where we had back-to-back games on like a Saturday or Sunday. So I think that's a great place to start. And then also, don't be afraid to try new sports. Like, that's something I wish I had done more of. I was so stuck in soccer from such an early age that I played that year round, and I didn't give myself a chance to try like track or cross country, even though I think I could have been good at it.
Yeah, really, really good advice there. I really appreciate you sharing that. And sticking on this topic, kind of a part 2 type of question. So there's a lot of people I know on a personal level who are around our age, high 20s, 30s, or even older, who, still are a little scarred from running being that punishment from their youth age that they were doing, when they were in high school, middle school, whatever it may have been. And so because of that, they are not interested in getting into running. What would you say to someone who has this mindset to turn around their thoughts and give running a chance?
Yeah, I was that person. So, and I just ran the Hilton Head Marathon this past weekend with my best friend, and it was her first marathon. She literally started running like February of 2023, and she's another person that never had run before, only thought of it as like, you're forcing me to do this until then. And I think it's coming at it from a less competitive notion. A lot of people played sports growing up. I'm a super competitive person, so I think in order to start a running journey, first you just have to like take the comparison out of it. A lot of people, while they might think of it as like a punishment, sometimes you think about it in terms of punishing yourself, because I know when I started my running journey a few years ago, I was really comparing myself to who I was in high school or in college when I could run such fast miles and I was just so in shape. And being able to drop that, as well as not comparing myself to people that I knew that like never quit running or ran cross country in college or things like that, helped me to kind of like break down that barrier of like, why do I think this is a punishment? And partially it was just like what was in my own head of the competitive nature that so many of us have, where if I can't win, I don't want to do it. And like, I'm the first one to tell you here, like, I'm not a fast runner. I'm very much an average runner. I'm never going to win a race, but all the things that running gives me is what makes it worth it. Like the time during my day to be alone with my thoughts and really process what I've done at work or in my personal life, build confidence in who I am and that I can do really hard things and just persevere for, running multiple hours at a time, the longest distances you can imagine, like running a marathon. All of that's really helped me in my personal life, and that's why I think running is so important.
Yeah. That's terrific that you understand the benefits of what it does for your life. And I think if you're someone who's listening to this right now and that topic of viewing it as a punishment, take that as motivation, at least give it a shot, right? I mean, you're listening to 2 people who, have really invested their lives, at least for the last couple years plus, into running and have seen such similar benefits. I'm sure you could agree, Emily, it doesn't happen right away, though, right? How long did it actually take to get some of these benefits that you've started to feel with running?
Yeah, I think that's the biggest misconception or thing that people go into starting their running journey with, where they think like, oh, I'm instantly going to go out and run a 5K or feel great, and that's just not how it is. Like, I went out for my first run after a long break from running and a long break from fitness in general at like the end of 2020, and running 1 mile hurt. Like, my lungs hurt, my legs hurt. I was about to cry because I couldn't believe I was in that state of like not being able to run a mile, and it was like hitting rock bottom in my opinion when it comes to like my fitness career or my lifelong fitness to that point. But it got easier each time because at least I knew what to expect. I didn't always feel the benefits immediately. Like, I didn't like leave with all this mental clarity like I do on a lot of runs now. And it definitely, because I started my running journey, it was like December of that year. It was cold. My lungs were not used to it. I was definitely feeling that. But I think if you go into it and you say, I'm going to give this a month, you will, by the end of that month, feel different and notice improvements. If you only give it a few runs, then you're giving up too soon.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I want to kind of talk about this journey, right, of getting to Emily Runs a Marathon. So you said you started off, barely being able to do a mile, and then now you just finished your third marathon, which is an amazing accomplishment. Congrats. Most people, as we know, I think it used to be 1%, maybe it's higher now with all the content motivating people, but the moral of the story is it takes a rare individual to even do one marathon, so you should be really proud of the success you've had over the coming years. What type of training have you instilled over the last few years to get yourself to a point where you've been able to run and complete a marathon, and then also be able to stay in shape to continually training for them and run, you've done 3 marathons right at this point. So I'm just curious, what your training and what your mindset looks like when it comes to doing marathons, because it takes a lot, and I know you came from soccer, so you probably had some of that aerobic base coming in, but still it's a big adjustment. So I'd love to learn a little bit about what your training is.
Yeah, for sure. So I started this running journey at the end of 2020, start of 2021, and I ran my first marathon in March of 2022. So a little over a year of running got me to that point.
Okay.
So it is a long journey. When I started, I just ran a mile that first day, and I think having a baseline test of what you can do helps. I didn't go out that day with that intention, but I think it did help me to level set. Okay, Emily, you cannot run 5 miles like you used to do. You just need to work on a mile. So I used the Couch to 5K or C to 5K app to start, and it really gave me a base of running and walking workouts, and I think it was 3 days a week. So I did that for a 12-week program, and that helped me establish a base again to be able to run a 5K more easily without stopping, feel confident in that, know how it felt, get back in the routine of warming up, stretching. There were some great resources in that I used. And then for the first year of training, I really only used free materials. So I found online a free 10K training plan, and I really just moved up in the distances. So that was January through March training for a 5K, March through the end of June training for a 10K, and I wasn't as concerned about speed at all as much as just being able to cover the distance. That June was my 29th birthday, and I decided I really wanted to be able to run a marathon before my 30th birthday. So that's when I went ahead and signed up for the marathon that following March, and decided I would do a half marathon training plan that I think was 10 weeks long, and then start a 18-week marathon training plan, which is a very popular one. People use the Hal Higdon one. I used that for my first one. It worked fine for me, but I definitely have evolved from that training plan to now. So that worked great for me as far as the first marathon goes. The goal was just to finish, and I had a great time. I ran the Asheville Marathon, and a ton of my friends and family came out to it, and I felt such a sense of accomplishment for being able to go from running a mile in a lot of pain to 26.2 in a year, and just completely physically and mentally evolved, and really got out of the funk that I was in the 2020, 2021 pandemic times where everyone was just really going through it. During the same time when I was training for the Asheville Marathon, I decided to be a charity runner for the Chicago Marathon that in 2022. So a huge reason why I got into running or needed a mental health release that I talk about on TikTok is that during the pandemic, which is crazy that we're almost 30 and this happened, my husband was diagnosed with bone cancer, which is insane. He's fine now, but that was some of the mental release I needed. So I joined the American Cancer Society, trained with them. One of the bonuses of being a charity runner for a big organization in a large race like Chicago is that they have all these resources. So I actually got paired with a running coach, and I didn't have to pay for it either. So that was an incredible experience. I got a really awesome training plan out of it that wasn't just focused on mileage. It was also had speed training, all kinds of different workouts in it that I had never done before. The Hal Higdon one was really just run this time period or run these miles. And then it was when I started trying to figure out what I like to do outside of running when it comes to cross training or strength training. And I've evolved in using that same training plan to this past time. So I just ran the Hilton Head Marathon this past weekend. I largely went about this training just to train with my best friend. We did every single long run together, and the goal was just get her across the finish line and feel really happy and confident in doing it. So we used pretty much the exact same training plan that I had for Chicago, which is 4 days of running, one long run, one like speed workout, and 2 easier runs a week. And then I try to incorporate cross training or strength training 2 times a week as well. I really like spin classes. I really like yoga. So I do a lot of classes around Charleston with that. But as I evolve, I definitely want to figure out a plan that like evolves with me as my goals evolve, as well as get better at strength training.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Phenomenal answer.
Long story. Sorry.
No, I mean, I always appreciate a long answer from a guest because it gives me different ideas for questions, and I mean, it allows us to really get to know you. So first of all, I do want to say, regarding the resources that you took advantage of, yeah, I mean, there are so many free training plans, things online that you can utilize to get you started, and it's great that you were able to find some different tools and different resources to help you. And for anyone who's just starting out, there's some of those I've never heard of, and I'm sure they work really great. So thank you for sharing that, Emily. Regarding Chicago Marathon and your husband and the charity that you did, what an amazing story. I'm so glad to hear that he's okay, and such a great cause. So that's really inspiring that you did that. And of course, there's so many great causes for some of these races. I mean, obviously a lot of us, we choose to run because we're trying to accomplish our own personal goals and needs, which I think there is definitely a lot of reason to do that. But having a story like that and trying to connect and give back in a way that you did, I really respect that story. So thank you so much for opening up and sharing that. I'm just curious in general though, what about the marathon? I know you talked about the goal of doing a marathon before you were 30 and then also the movie, but what specifically about the marathon has you keep on coming back? Because a lot of people will just run one and then they move on. Maybe they do 5Ks every couple, months or years, but you're doing it more and more. You're adding other areas of fitness around your training for it. It sounds like you might have some larger goals you're working on over time. What about the marathon specifically has you hooked at this point?
That's a good question. Funny enough, while I thought running was a punishment, I weirdly found a things I want to do before I'm 30 list when I was helping my parents pack up a bunch of stuff. I think I wrote it when I was 16, and I wrote run a marathon on that. I blacked that out. I don't even remember writing that, but it's funny that when I found that, I had already run a marathon. So it's definitely been a part of me for a long time, and I think it's because I looked up to a lot of athletes growing up, even soccer players that run distance on the side as a way to keep in shape. And I had a soccer coach that I absolutely loved and adored in late middle school, early high school, and she played soccer in college and ran marathons and got really into that in the time that she was my coach. So I think that left a lasting impact on me. And as far as the distance goes, it's something that in my opinion, you can't just go out and just go do without training. I know I have seen TikToks of people doing that. I don't advise that if you don't want to get really injured. But I live in Charleston. Our biggest race here that we have people come and travel for is the Cooper River Bridge Run, and it's a 10K. It's a ton of fun. It's one of my favorite races. But I know people who just don't really run. They're semi in shape and they go do that race every year, and it's a great time, and that's great if you can do that. But the competitive person in me that likes working hard for something and is really intrinsically motivated, I like doing something that not everyone can just go out and go do. So I think that's why the distance appeals to me, because you have to work for it. And even now, having run my third this past weekend and feeling really confident while doing it, every mile wasn't easy. There were definitely still some really hard moments. There was definitely a way steeper hill than I was expecting that had me questioning my sanity at mile 19. But it's something I keep coming back to, because after every time I cross the finish line, I feel better than I did the day before that. And a lot of my friends have gotten into it more recently or have started their running journey. So it's really fun to kind of see a community growing around that too amongst my friends.
That's fantastic. So, I know, as you mentioned, you live in Charleston, South Carolina. It's a place I honestly haven't been yet. I'd love to come visit eventually. Um, but walk me through how the running community is there. Like, where do you typically train? And then I also want to learn about how your experience was with the Hilton Head Marathon as well, like how that course was. But let's start with running in Charleston.
Yeah, so Charleston is like a beach town that is several islands and a peninsula that's connected. So there's a lot of places to run. Really pretty place to run. Like you can go to. I live 20 minutes from the beach, which is awesome. But then like the downtown part of Charleston, which is like the historic district, is really cool. It's a great place to run. You can cover a ton of mileage. The downside is there are no hills. You're not going to get any incline because you're at like 0 feet
You're not
sea
training
level.
for a trail race there.
Yeah, no trails. We have one bridge that has a pedestrian like lane on it that you could run on. And when I was training for Asheville, I have a treadmill now, thankfully. But at that point, I just ran the bridge several times a week, which got pretty boring. But aside from that, if you're like traveling to Charleston or living in Charleston and interested in starting to run, like there are so many cool routes. I honestly use Strava to plan a lot of my runs because so many people log their runs there. But I love running in downtown Charleston. I love running from Mount Pleasant, which is a really like cute neighborhood kind of feeling part of Charleston, to Sullivan's Island, which is a really beautiful beach that has like a historic lighthouse on it. There's always a breeze, which is nice because you're right at the beach. But I definitely will warn that we have a lot of tourists here. So when it comes to driving or crowded sidewalks, we have a lot of bad drivers and really crowded sidewalks during the day. So definitely start early because it gets hot and they're just, especially in the summertime, it's hard to be anywhere where there aren't like a ton of people out and about, which I know in New York, same thing. So it's a great place to run, but can be challenging, especially when you're trying to get like an 18 or 20 mile run in to figure out like, how am I going to connect these different areas? What bridge am I going over? And how am I risking my safety today?
Absolutely. Well, that's really good context. When I make my trip over there, I mean, I'll definitely make sure to keep the headphone volume low.
Yeah.
I gotta watch out for those drivers, or run before the traffic and the tourists get there. So I appreciate that. But it does sound like a really beautiful place to run. I mean, running by the beach, like you can't beat that, especially when the weather is awesome. So
Yeah.
I'm a little jealous of that. That sounds great.
Yeah, it was
But
great.
yeah, if you want to share a little bit about the Hilton Head Marathon, I'm curious about that because I'm going to be honest. We got accepted to this Ventures Endurance program as ambassadors, and there's all these races that we get to choose to be able to have the opportunity to do. That was one I was definitely considering. I have a lot of travel coming up this year, so I had to hold back on that one specifically. I'm trying to do some more local ones, but I'd be curious because I don't know anyone who's ever ran that race. I haven't had any conversations about it quite yet. Walk me through like that experience and what to expect for anyone who might want to do that race next year or just about it in general.
So I got super lucky. I was already registered for it when I got accepted for the Venture Endurance ambassadorship. So I got to, really easily have my first race like knocked out for that, which is really cool. Hilton Head is in like the southern tip of South Carolina. It's about an hour and a half from where I live. So luckily I'm familiar with the area, and I have been training in what I thought was the same climate. It actually was really hot that day. But it's a really cool course, really, really well organized, I will say. I've run some races recently that were like locally run races where there was a lot of confusion at the start line, but really simple like packet mailing, packet pickup. The route was like a healthy mix of on a road that was kind of like a like highway they had shut down like one whole side of, to they went over a few overpasses, which was really cool views, nice breeze, but again a big incline. And then there were some like trails we ran through and some flatter areas that were really pretty. Like Hilton Head is very natural looking, like they've kept a ton of the trees. It's really pretty, so there was a lot of like really shaded parts. I truly enjoyed it. The marathon course and the half marathon course were the exact same course, you just did it twice as the marathon. So a lot of people do not like that. I like knowing what to expect. I like love an out and back. I like a loop. I knew exactly like how, like what to plan for after doing the half marathon going into the second loop, especially knowing I was running it with my best friend and it was her first marathon. So I could like kind of think of what were going to be the hardest miles on the back half and how I could help and encourage her. I think like 2,000 or 3,000 people run the half. and like 500 run the full. So I will say it definitely could get a little lonely depending on the miles that you were on, just because after the half marathon split off, you were kind of in smaller groups, but it's a perfect race to run with a group. Like if you want to travel, Hilton Head it's the off season for Hilton Head. So we had an awesome Airbnb for like a super affordable price, and we had a big group that went for it. So we had people that came and cheered us on, made signs, other people that were running the marathon and half marathon, and it made a really good like group experience. And then, like I said, like great aid stations, great volunteers, like no shortage of anything at any time. So that always really helps when you're trying to run 26 miles.
Yeah, that was very descriptive. I appreciate that. Because like those little details, they're really important. Like I've ran some big races that can be really unorganized, or, you know, you have to be there 3 days before the race to get your packet and all these different things. But it sounds like they really put the runners first in a lot of ways and try to provide that really like best in class experience, and combine it with what sounds like a really awesome course made for a really good race. And I know what you're saying about the out and backs. Like some people, they don't like it, but it's like, a lot of times, especially if you're traveling for a race, the first time you see that area and if you have to see something twice, like you're going to be okay. And at least you know, like there's not going to be anything that confuses you during the race. But
absolutely.
At the same time, I do understand like wanting to see more of the city, but you know, you could always drive around your car.
Right.
So no, that's really fun. And that's great that you got like a group together and had such a good support system. I think that's really important. You know, I'd be curious because it sounds like you were helping your friend, you said. So were you pacing her and just running the race with her to like make sure she was able to finish and have someone that could help her out during that experience mostly?
Yeah, we've done this entire training together. Like I said, this was her first time training for this marathon cycle. We started like 6 months ago, honestly, because we trained for a half marathon too, and then added on marathon training to that. So my entire goal was to finish with her, run whatever pace worked best for her, where she felt more comfortable. The last hill, she was like, I got to walk up part of it. And I was like, cool, we're walking. We're going to blast some Eminem, and we're going to get pumped up to run down this hill. And she did amazing. And it's not easy to train for your first marathon. It was also like 65 or 70 degrees and sunny, and we have not been training. It's not been that warm in Charleston for this entire, like since October or September. So handling that heat and that sun for the first time in many months, like I give her a lot of credit for doing that for her first marathon.
Yeah, that's great. I'd be curious, like, what made you specifically want to go through an experience where you were running a race in a very selfless way, where you were really just taking the part of being a friend, helping out, because your goal wasn't like your own personal goals and your own time. Like, yes, you know, running a race is going to be an amazing experience for anyone, any way that you do it. But like, what were some of your motivations from this experience, and like, how did it feel to run it with someone and see someone achieve their goal compared to you running for your own goal? Because I've done this a few times, and like, these are personally very memorable experiences. For me. Some of my favorite moments in running have actually been when I'm not running a race for my own time, but for someone else's experience. But I'd love to hear, like, from your point of view, how that was.
Yeah, I mean, I think this definitely goes down as like my favorite marathon experience for so many of those reasons. It doesn't hurt that she's my best friend going into it, so it was really like selfishly knocking out my Saturday long runs over the past 5-ish months, like, and having a conversation partner has been awesome, just because running can be lonely. Like, it doesn't have to be. There are so many different ways to find community in running that I didn't know about going into starting my running journey, but especially training for a marathon, there are times where I absolutely love going out for a run by myself with my headphones in, like just me and my thoughts. But there are other times where you want someone to share that with, and it's been so fun. This is my first time training with someone else, but like each week having those milestones that she was working on with me, and talking about them, planning for them, you know, getting together like the night before our longest run, we cooked a meal together to kind of like practice what we were going to eat the night before the marathon. And it's just been something fun to feel excited about again. It's a very similar feeling to how I felt with my teammates playing sports growing up. where we have this common goal that we're working towards and we're going to support each other through it. And yeah, it felt absolutely incredible to be able to be a part of her journey there and getting her across the finish line. And I know she's got many more marathons she wants to do from now on. I think she's definitely got the marathon bug, but if you are someone who's trained for marathons and run many marathons and you haven't like helped a friend or helped someone train for one and run with them, like definitely add that to your bucket list, because it was just such a cool feeling to watch someone that you love and care about like find that joy and love for something that you love so much and accomplish a really big goal.
Absolutely. Yeah, thanks so much for sharing that. And I think like there's people who don't even realize like that could be such a cool next goal for them to just help someone out. Because like I said, I've done it a few times, and like I will do that experience for anyone who wants to, like that has a big goal. So that's really awesome that you've done that as well. So I'm curious, like you just finished this race, like, what's next for you with running? I don't know if you need some time to like recharge to think about that, but you know, are there things on the calendar for you this year? What does 2024 look like for you regarding running?
Yeah, I'm feeling great coming off Hilton Head because I ran it with my friend, and now I kind of want to think through goals that work best for me. I am running the Charleston Bridge Run, which is a 10K in April. I run that like every year with my friends, and it's just like a really fun experience in Charleston, and I think like 40,000 people run it every year, so it's a really crazy day. So running that, and I probably won't have a goal associated with that because we'll just have a really big group of people running it and then like going out and partying after, to be honest. But I, with Ventures Endurance, am planning to run the Maine Coast Marathon in May, so I'll get back into marathon training like fairly quickly, and I want to keep my level of endurance up. Up until this point, like the 3 marathons that I've run, I've really just wanted to finish, have a great time, but now I do want to, you know, figure out how I can progress when it comes to speed. I ran the Charleston half marathon about a month ago, and I PR'd and ran it in like 2 hours exactly. So wow. I'm really proud of that. That was a big PR for me by like 13 minutes. So I want to keep running half marathons along the way too, to see how I can like get faster. But I think about this point now where I like don't know how to necessarily set speed goals for myself because I've just been running based on the distance and not really the time. So definitely doing some research on that, trying to figure out what works best there before I like really go heads down again in a few weeks to train for Maine Coast. And then I'd like to find a fall marathon to do as well. Like I know I'm going to do a hot chocolate run in like December, but those are shorter distance. So I don't know what fall marathon I want to do. I'm considering charity running for New York because that's a bucket list marathon for me. And there's some other like Ventures marathons that look really cool. I love traveling for races and like making that a part of your itinerary to go explore a new place. So still checking out the Ventures calendar too, just to see like if there's somewhere I want to go in October, November timeline and fit in another marathon this year.
Yeah, no, that's super cool. It sounds like you have so much coming up. So I look forward to following along on your journey. And on that topic of following along on your journey, you know, obviously the reason I found you is because you create content online just like myself when it comes to running. What actually motivated you to start creating content? And for those who might want to follow along on your journey, like what types of running specific content are you creating right now?
Yeah, so I started sharing on TikTok around the time that I like started running, and so that was a little over 2 years ago at this point, where I guess I would say started running seriously. So I was training for my first marathon when I started my Emily Runs a Marathon TikTok account. So I just kind of started it as a way to self-document my journey and progress. I'm not like a journal write down kind of person, but I like the thought of having a journal, and creating like fun little creative videos just seemed more natural to me. To be honest, I didn't go about it thinking that it was something that would ever like take off. I actually blocked every single person that I knew for a long time because I was just like, I don't know where this is going, but I like being able to like look back and see where I've been. So it started like getting more traction. I started connecting with other runners. That's like honestly my favorite part, is meeting other runners like yourself and like learning from each other, supporting each other, like knowing when everyone's races are coming up and cheering them on virtually is so fun to me. But a lot of my content is really around, you know, sharing a runner's journey through the lens of someone I'm a 31-year-old girl. I work a full-time job. I have to fit in marathon training and balancing that with my everyday life. And I'm not, a professional athlete. I'm out here trying to run for happiness and joy and inspire other people to take on that journey and do something for themselves. So that's a lot of what I share, and really just trying to foster a sense of community amongst like average and beginner runners that are maybe feeling intimidated at first to get started, but need some encouragement and someone to help pave the way and say, it's okay, you're a runner. It doesn't matter how fast you run. It doesn't matter if you've never run before. You're a runner because you're running.
Yeah, no, that's so cool. And, I think it's funny how you started off just making it for yourself, and you're like, I don't want any of these people to know I'm doing this. And now you're obviously very open about it and comfortable with it. I think that's how a lot of people are, like, especially like when doing something that is like showing something off, because you are, but like in a really positive, helpful way for so many people. And I'm sure you're just going to continue that. So I'm glad you're no longer behind the scenes with it. And yeah, I think you've got some, really fun content that everyone should really check out. I guess before we give people a reminder of how to find you and anything else you want to mention about your page, do you have like a final tip, a quote, or even like a story that you'd like to share that you think could be helpful for the listeners?
Yeah, I mean, my biggest tip for beginners, again, is just to, level set with where you are. Like, so I meet so many people who say they want to start running, and just like you said in the start, all you need is like a pair of shoes and some pavement to just go out and do something, and it doesn't have to be a lot. So often we're really focused on these big goals like running a marathon or running any sort of race or a certain distance. You can literally go jog around your neighborhood for 5 minutes, and that is accomplishing a run. So think about it in smaller segments. It makes it more manageable that way. That's how I approached my journey with training for a 5K, 10K, half marathon, and not necessarily thinking about like the longest distance first. It just made it not feel stressful and overwhelming. And then as I got better, got more confident in my running, I could set more long-term goals there. So really just think about like where you are, be where your feet are, go for a 5 or 10 minute run and take it in and enjoy it.
That's awesome. Cool. Well, we got Emily Runs a Marathon. That's just spelt Emily, Emily, runs a marathon. What platforms are you on besides, I know we met on TikTok, but what other platforms are you on? And is there anything else, like any final things that you'd like to share about your brand and, what you're trying to accomplish?
Yeah, I'm on TikTok. Through TikTok, you can link out to everything else, but I'm also on Instagram. I have a goal of posting YouTubes this year. I have a YouTube channel with only one video on it right now, but I plan to start sharing more of my journey there. But definitely follow along. I love to follow other runners, so if you follow, shoot me a message, let me follow you back and see your journey, because I love seeing other, especially beginner runners, start sharing where they are in their running journey, especially on TikTok. That's where I started.
Amazing. Well, Emily, thank you again. This was really great. So nice to get to know you and your story. I think some of what you shared today, it's really going to make a big difference in so many different folks who listen. So I really appreciate that. And yeah, if there's anything I can do to help you in the future, definitely don't hesitate to let me know.
Awesome, thanks. And I'm so glad to have discovered your podcast through this. I listened to a few episodes today, but definitely adding it to my running rotation.
Awesome. Well, enjoy it. All right. Well, thank you everyone for listening to another episode in the Run Breiter podcast. If anyone needs any running advice or tips, feel free to reach out. We're always happy to help. And as always, don't forget to run brighter. Thanks.